Throughout history, humanity has grappled with a myriad of sins. Among them, there lies one sin so pervasive, so seductive, that it often goes unrecognized, even as it weaves its way into the fabric of our lives. This sin is not just an act, it's an insidious force, a subtle yet powerful presence that undermines our very essence. It is the most addictive sin in the world. It is a sin that traps people. This sin has left its mark on every era, every civilization. It has crept into the lives of the mighty and the meek alike, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. It has shattered lives, broken relationships, and torn apart families. It has been the unseen force behind the collapse of marriages and the destruction of nations. Nations have risen and fallen under its influence, and history bears witness to its destructive power. This sin is the most addictive sin in the world. What makes this sin so addictive? It is its deceptive nature. This sin, once it takes hold, is relentless. It consumes people's thoughts, dictates people's actions, and determines people's destiny. Now, from the introduction of my sermon, are you able to guess what the sin is? Go on, guess what this sin is. Chances are you guessed both correctly and incorrectly. This one sin is found in the book of Hebrews in its 12th chapter. Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight, and the sin which doth so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. The Bible speaks of a particular sin that so easily besets us. This is the most addictive sin. This sin can be different for each person, but it is something that continually tempts an individual and draws them away from God. What is God telling us here? There is a sin that so easily besets you. There is a sin that so easily entangles you. There is a sin that so easily trips you up. There is a sin that you are susceptible to. What is that sin? Answer the question quietly in your heart today. What is the sin in your life? It may be a secret sin or a public sin that everyone knows about, but each and every person has a sin that so easily ensnares them. And the strange thing about this sin is that it may not affect me like it affects you. The sin that so easily ensnares you could be something that the people around you don't struggle with, but for you, it is an area of weakness. I like watching combat sports such as boxing and mixed martial arts. And one thing that these professional athletes do before a fight is watch tape on their opponent. Watching tape on your opponent in boxing or mixed martial arts is a strategy used by fighters and their coaches to gain insight into their opponent's strengths and weaknesses. This is done by studying video footage of their opponent's previous fights, training sessions, and interviews. By analyzing this footage, fighters and coaches can identify patterns in their opponent's fighting style, such as their preferred techniques, defensive strategies, and tendencies under pressure. They can also identify any weaknesses or vulnerabilities that the opponent may have, such as a tendency to tire quickly or a susceptibility to certain types of strikes. This information is then used to develop a game plan for the upcoming fight. Fighters and coaches can tailor their training to specifically target their opponent's weaknesses, and they can develop strategies to exploit their opponent's tendencies in the ring or cage. And I believe this is what Satan does to human beings. Satan hates you and is out to exploit you and expose your weaknesses. He watches tape about you in the sense that he knows what the sin that so easily ensnares you is. Satan has a game plan of his plan of attack on how to destroy you. Satan will never tempt you with something that you don't have a proclivity to want. Not saying you will only get tempted to commit this one sin. However, the opportunity to commit the one sin that easily ensnares you will be presented to you a lot more than other sins. Think for a moment. What is that sin in your life? Be honest with yourself. What is that sin for you? Is it pride? Some people are so full of pride they are a nightmare to be around. Everyone just doesn't like dealing with them because they are always right. Married for 20 years and never once have you ever been wrong about anything. Married for 20 years and never once have you ever said the 3 words, "I am sorry." There is nothing worse than being married to a proud person, because a proud person can never admit when they are wrong. A proud person can never admit when they do something wrong. They just dig their heels in deeper. God is telling you today to lay aside your pride. Go save your marriage today and apologize to your husband or wife. You will have to give an account on Judgment Day for the pride that you are currently dearly clinging onto. Marriages are falling apart, and one of the reasons marriages are falling apart is because of people's pride. God is telling you today to lay aside your pride. Yet in the same breath, there are people who don't struggle with the issue of pride. They walk in humility, but that's because pride is not the sin that easily ensnares them. For you, is it gambling? Gambling addictions are serious. I thank God I have never had a problem with gambling, but I have pastored people who have, and I have seen how gambling can grip a life. How it can take over one's mind for a grown man, with responsibilities to act irrationally. Gambling can cause a person to steal from their own mother, just to gamble some more. I once knew a man who had to go with his wife to gambling institutions within a 50-mile radius of his home, to tell them not to let him in there if he ever comes in. It's not just a personal struggle, it affects families, friends, and entire communities. The allure of quick riches, the thrill of risk-taking, can blind an individual to the value of what they already possess. Financial ruin is a common outcome, but the emotional and relational toll is even more devastating. It breaks the trust within families, strains relationships to their breaking point, and can leave lasting scars on children who witness the chaos. The irony is that the more one loses, the more desperate they become to win it all back, creating a vicious cycle that's hard to break. Is that sin drug addiction? Drug addiction is a horrible addiction. It is a sin that can pull you out of your home. It is a sin that can make you lose everyone around you. It is a sin that will make you do anything for your next high. And when I say anything, I mean anything. This addiction doesn't just harm the individual, it ripples through their entire life, affecting every relationship and opportunity. It's a sin that consumes not only the body but also the mind and soul, leading one down a path of destruction and despair. It is a sin that destroys the body. It is a sin that can make people literal zombies. The pursuit of the next high becomes a relentless drive that overshadows all else, often leading to dangerous and illegal activities. Families are torn apart, careers are destroyed, and the very essence of the individual is eroded. For you, in your life, is the sin that easily ensnares you: lust. Some people listening to me right now have struggled with lust for decades. Lust is the sin that so easily ensnares them. They have struggled with watching immoral videos on the internet. They have struggled with fornication and adultery. They are pushed into doing things they don't want to do because of lust. They want to stop living promiscuous lifestyles, but they can't say no. They don't want to masturbate, but they can't say no. They don't want to watch those unholy things on the internet, but they can't say no. They don't want to fornicate, but they can't say no. They don't want to commit adultery, but they can't say what? They can't say no. However, for some people, lust is not the sin that easily besets them. Sin has a deceptive nature about it. Sin has the unnatural and subtle ability to lay dormant for years. Sin has the ability to fool a person, to make them think that they have overcome that specific sin. And indeed, years may pass, and even decades may pass by. But that sin is not gone. It is waiting. It is waiting. Waiting for the right circumstances to fall into place. Waiting. Sin is patient. Sin is patient. That is the deceptive nature of sin. It will lull you into a false sense of security. A false sense of security that you don't have to be so diligent in guarding against that specific sin anymore. And as time moves on, you begin to lower your guard and believe that you have overcome this sin. Years can pass by. Decades can pass by. Once the circumstances align, lust that was dormant for years can strike again with full force, and this is the deceptive nature of lust. It can hide from you and make you believe that you don't need to guard against it, but it can take away your family, make you regret your decisions, and destroy your health, steal your wealth, and take your peace of mind. Lust will dictate your decisions, and I have witnessed its destructive power during my decades in the ministry. Unchecked lust can pull a person where they never wanted to go, and they may wonder how they ended up in such a low place. Lust can even lead people to make promises they can't keep and spend all their money, leaving them in tears, leaving them divorced, leaving them in financial ruin. Lust. I always thought with all the destruction lust causes, it should be a longer word. How can such a small word cause so much destruction? L-U-S-T. For you in your life, is that sin anger? Are you someone who struggles with anger, always on the edge, where the smallest thing can push you over into a fit of rage? Your whole family and the people around you all know to tread carefully around you because they know that you are literally a ticking time bomb. Yet in the same breath, there are people who don't struggle with anger, and they rarely ever get angry. They have no temper, nor do they have a proclivity for rage. For some people, it is laziness. There are some people who struggle with laziness. All they want to do is sleep and sleep all day long. Unless you have a medical condition, 8 hours of sleep per night is an adequate amount of sleep. They plan their day around sleep because they are lazy, sleeping 14 hours in a day. Laziness is not only expressed in sleep, it is expressed in not doing what you are supposed to do. If there is a task or job that you are supposed to do, and you neglect doing that job for the simple reason that it will require you to exert a great deal of effort, that is laziness. Yet in the same breath, there are people who don't struggle with laziness. They are hardworking, diligent people. Everything they do, they give 100%. Everything that needs to be done, they do it. Every day for them to get out of bed and to be productive is a struggle because laziness is the sin that easily ensnares them. Not to say they will never commit any other sin. However, the sin that easily gets them is laziness. There is a sin. For some other people, it is covetousness, greed, envy, sloth. So, the most addictive sin in the world is different for different people. Some people for decades have been struggling with fornication, others with adultery, others with lying. At every opportunity they lie. There are people who struggle with stealing. I once knew of a woman who was caught in church stealing another church member's Bible. People have a problem with sin. For you, stealing could be something that you never struggled with. But for this woman, it was her area of weakness. There are people who for decades have been struggling with watching unholy, immoral videos on the internet, and this is the sin that is the most addictive, which they are struggling to overcome. Different people struggle with different sins, and that is a reality. There are people who struggle with sins that you do not struggle with. Do not be so quick to point the finger in judgment of other people. As we reflect upon the various sins that so easily entangle us, be it pride, gambling, drug addiction, lust, anger, laziness, or countless others, our hearts might grow weary under the weight of these struggles. But dear brothers and sisters, we are not left to face these battles alone. This is where our gaze must shift, where our focus must turn. We look to Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, as stated in Hebrews 12:2. Remember, it is Jesus who begins our journey of faith. He is the cornerstone, the foundation upon which our faith is built. His life, his teachings, his sacrifice on the cross, and his resurrection are the bedrock of our belief. He is the ultimate example of living a life free from the bondage of sin. Jesus doesn't just start our faith journey. He promises to bring it to completion. He is the finisher of our faith. In him, our faith finds its fulfillment and completion. This is a profound truth to hold on to, especially when we find ourselves struggling with recurring sins. In the midst of our battles with sin, we must redirect our focus towards Jesus. When our eyes are fixed on him, the struggles and temptations we face begin to lose their grip on us. In Jesus, we find the strength to overcome, the wisdom to navigate our challenges, and the peace that surpasses all understanding. Nurture your love for Christ. Allow Christ to be your first love, and not sin. Hate sin and love Jesus Christ. Do battle with sin and love Christ. Do not get into a situation with that sin where you accept it as a part of your life. The devil is a liar. That sin is not a permanent part of your life. Hate it. Do battle with that sin. Hate it like the enemy it is, and love Christ like the Savior he is. Love him with all of your heart. Love him with all that you have. The love of Christ will lead you away from sin. Looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. Focus on Jesus Christ and His Word. The love of Christ will help you live a holy life and enable you to overcome any addiction of sin. With whatever sin you are struggling with today, Jesus Christ has set people free from worse situations and worse sins than you are in today. Do not listen to Satan and his lies. You are not hopeless. You are not destined for hell. You are not a lost cause. Focus on Christ. Look unto Christ.